There is a kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't touch, a quiet exhaustion that builds not in the body, but somewhere deeper, in the constant noise of your own mind. You wake up early, you work, you fulfill your duties. From the outside, nothing is wrong, but inside, there is a tension, like a string pulled too tightly for too long. Not a crisis, just a weariness so well hidden that even you forget it's there. Perhaps you've mistaken emotional chaos for mere busyness. And in your attempt to manage everything, you've lost the feeling of being anchored to anything, and maybe wish that's what brought you here. Not curiosity, not even philosophy, but a quiet collapse. Be honest with yourself. Are you seeking Stoicism out of interest and or out of emotional survival? You might believe that if you can just control more, your schedule, your reactions, your world, peace will follow. But that's the illusion, and it's exhausting. The belief that control leads to calm is the very thing keeping your mind agitated, like trying to still the surface of a lake by grabbing the water with your hands. The more you reach, the more you disturb it. What if peace has never been about controlling life, but learning how to stop being controlled by it? Stoicism won't give you a plan to dominate your emotions. It's not a shortcut, nor is it a shield. It's a mirror. And mirrors, as you know, don't fix you, they reveal you. This philosophy doesn't promise to erase your feelings, nor does it demand that you become stone. On the contrary, it teaches you to observe, to endure, to respond with clarity. It's a path back to yourself, the version that exists before the noise, before the need to impress, before the collapse. So perhaps that you don't need to become anything, you only need to return, quietly, inward, to that which has always been waiting, beneath the noise, beneath the effort, stillness. There's a silent war that most never admit they're fighting, a battle that doesn't leave bruises, but drains every ounce of energy. It's the invisible effort of trying to control what was never yours to command, people's opinions, the unfolding of events, the unpredictable rhythm of life. You micromanage moments, revise conversations in your head, anticipate disasters that may never come, and even when everything seems to go according to plan, something inside remains restless. Maybe you've mistaken responsibility for control, but they are not the same. One empowers you to act, the other enslaves you to outcomes. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience confirmed it. Peace doesn't come from influence. It comes from discernment, knowing where your control ends and where surrender must begin. When you believe you must manage everything, your nervous system responds as if every unmet expectation is a failure. Cortisol rises. Your breath shortens. The body enters a silent panic. It's not your fault, but it is your pattern. There is clarity and relief in dividing the world in two: what is mine, what is not. This is the dichotomy of control, and it's not a theory, it's a lens. It transforms chaos into focus. What would shift in your day if each morning you quietly wrote down the things within your control and the ones you must release? This is not passivity, it is power, refined. Picture the archer. He draws the bow with care, focuses on his aim, breathes slowly. But once the arrow is released, it is no longer his. The wind, the distance, the target, all outside his domain. His peace is found not in the hit, but in the precision of his release. Maybe that's your invitation too, to live with full effort and let go without collapse, to stop being held hostage by outcomes, and to finally realize that your strength was never about control, but about clarity. The mind has a habit of time travel. It wanders into futures that haven't happened and pasts that no longer exist. And in doing so, it rarely touches the only place where life is actually unfolding. Now, how many moments have you spent fearing a future that never arrived? How often have you replayed an old conversation, not to learn but to self-punish? We suffer, not because of events, but because of the anticipation of them. That's the quiet trap. You think you're preparing, but you're actually rehearsing pain. The Stoics weren't indifferent to emotion. They simply knew where to place their attention, to endure the present without being dominated by the future. That is strength, because each time you run from this moment, anxiety grows stronger, and each time you return to now, you reclaim yourself. Avoidance is not peace, it's an echo chamber of imagined disasters. What if, just for today, you trained your awareness like a steady hand on the reins of a wild horse? When your thoughts bolt into regret or rush toward uncertainty, gently bring them back, not with force, with clarity. Breathe in and remind yourself, this moment is enough. Do that 4 times a day. not as a ritual, but as a return, because your mind is like a horse, powerful, instinctive, loyal, but if you never teach it where to graze, it will keep running. And you'll keep chasing peace when it was always under your feet. Comfort can be deceptive. It whispers promises of ease, but slowly weakens the foundation of your resilience. Modern life is curated to avoid friction, temperature-controlled, endlessly distracted, always buffered from discomfort. But the cost of this constant ease is fragility. You begin to fear even the thought of pain. Small frustrations feel enormous. Minor setbacks shake your sense of self, because you've never trained for the cold. The Stoics understood something we often forget. Discomfort is not the enemy. It is a teacher. And when chosen voluntarily, it becomes a powerful ally, not to punish, but to prepare. Negative visualization, for example, isn't about pessimism. It's about rehearsing the soul, imagining loss not to suffer in advance, but to sharpen presence, to prime gratitude, to build emotional antibodies. When you familiarize yourself with the possibility of difficulty, your nervous system learns to stay grounded, even when life becomes unstable. Neuroscience has a word for this: dopamine recalibration. When you remove indulgences, even briefly, the brain resets. What was once ordinary begins to feel meaningful again. A quiet morning, a simple meal, the company of someone who listens without trying to fix. And slowly, the threshold shifts. You no longer crumble at the first sign of discomfort. You meet it, you greet it, and you move through it with steady eyes. Imagine this: if you never train in the cold, the winters of life will paralyze you. But if you choose, in small and deliberate ways, to stretch your capacity, skip a comfort, walk in silence, confront a truth you've avoided, you'll find that discomfort loses its power to destabilize you. It becomes what it always was: a reminder of your ability to endure quietly, fully, with dignity. Somewhere along the way, you may have started outsourcing your sense of worth, measuring yourself through metrics not your own, validation, applause, outcomes you cannot fully control. And with each step further from yourself, the ground beneath you became less steady. It's a subtle erosion, not a collapse, but a fading. You feel strong only when you're praised. You feel secure only when things go right. And though everything may appear intact from the outside, inside you've become a fortress built on mirrors, fragile, reflective, easily shattered. The Stoics called us back to the inner citadel, a place within that cannot be touched by fortune or failure, a space beyond reputation, beyond performance, beyond ego, not because those things don't matter, but because they were never meant to define you. Modern psychology echoes this. Ego fragility stems from identity over attachment. When who you are becomes fused with what you do or what others see, your sense of self becomes volatile. So what are you defending? What invisible fortress have you built to protect a self-image that no longer serves you? Perhaps it's time to name it, quietly, in a journal, without judgment. What roles, titles, or ideas have become walls rather than windows? And then, remember this: a true fortress is not made of glass. It's made of principle, of clarity, of inner alignment. A person rooted in that kind of strength doesn't flinch at silence, doesn't panic in solitude, and doesn't collapse when misunderstood. They know that even if everything around them changes, something essential remains unmoved. That is the citadel, and it's not built overnight. It's remembered, one silent act of integrity at a time. Not all ambition is pure. Sometimes what looks like drive is just resistance in disguise, a refusal to accept what is, masked as relentless progress. You tell yourself you're aiming higher, moving forward, but underneath there's a quiet war against reality, a hope that if you push hard enough, life will finally become something other than what it is. But resistance is heavy, and often it is lonely. What if your peace is not waiting on the other side of achievement, but hidden in the ability to meet life exactly as it unfolds? Marcus Aurelius didn't just accept hardship, he invited it. He wrote not with bitterness but with reverence. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not passive surrender, it's an active embrace. To say, I may not have chosen this, but I will not reject it. Because resistance creates tension, but acceptance, even reluctant, allows the mind to breathe again. You begin to see that nothing is wasted, even the setback, even the silence, even the moment you thought was meaningless. Try whispering to yourself when things go off script. This too is the path. Let that mantra become a quiet thread that weaves clarity through disruption, not to pretend that pain is pleasant, but to remember that it is fertile ground, that what you resist persists, but what you meet transforms. Imagine fire. It does not simply endure fuel, it consumes it, integrates it, glows more brightly because of it. Amor fati, love of fate, is not romantic, it's resilient. It doesn't demand that you smile at tragedy, only that you remain open enough to allow meaning to emerge from it. Even this, especially this, is the path. Not every thought is true, not every feeling is final, but when you're caught in the moment, angry, anxious, ashamed, it's easy to forget that. The emotion speaks with such volume, you begin to believe it. I am angry, I am worthless, I am not enough. But those are not truths, they are weather, passing across the sky of your consciousness. The Stoics knew this. They practiced the art of self-observation, not to escape emotion, but to create space around it, to witness without fusing, to feel without collapsing. It's not suppression, it's sovereignty. Modern neuropsychology supports this. When you name an emotion from a slight distance, the brain calms. The prefrontal cortex, your inner observer, becomes active. You move from reaction to reflection. Try this. Instead of saying, I am angry, say, he feels anger. A subtle shift, but profound. You are not the storm, you are the one who watches it pass. Thoughts are actors, loud, convincing, dramatic, but you are the audience. Stay seated, watch, breathe. Don't leap onto the stage every time a thought demands your attention, because most of what disturbs you is not what's happening. It's how you fuse with the narrative inside your mind. And that's not weakness, it's habit. But habits can be rewired, gently, slowly, through awareness, through pause, through remembering that your value doesn't rise or fall with the temperature of your emotions. There is dignity in stillness, even when the theater is loud, especially then. We live as though time is endless, as if there will always be another morning, another chance, another moment to say what we've postponed. But death, quiet, impartial, ever present, reminds us otherwise. This isn't morbid, it's clarifying. Because when you truly remember that your days are numbered, your priorities rearrange themselves. Petty arguments lose their grip. Superficial goals dissolve. What remains is only what matters: presence, connection, truth. The Stoics practiced memento mori, not to dwell on mortality but to amplify the value of life. When you look honestly at your finiteness, you begin to see where you've been spending your attention and what it's costing you. Grief has a strange wisdom. It doesn't whisper cliches. It strips you bare. It shows you that success may impress others, but it rarely comforts you at night. That being right in an argument may feel like victory, but often tastes like loneliness. That one sincere conversation with someone you love carries more weight than 100 tasks crossed off a list. What unfinished feeling would haunt you if this was your final day? Not a project, not an email, a feeling. That's where the real work is. Each evening, ask yourself, softly without fear, if I died tonight, what would remain unresolved in me? Let that reflection not scare you, but center you. Let it bring you back to the essential. Because death, paradoxically, is what teaches us how to live. It is the lamp that reveals the dust of false urgency, and under that light, you see clearly. What matters is not how long you live, but how deeply you touch the life you already have. There's a split-second between stimulus and response, and within that moment lives your freedom. Most people miss it. They react. Instinctively, automatically. Words are spoken that can't be taken back. Actions unfold that don't align with who they truly want to be. But you can learn to see that space. Reactiveness feels powerful, like asserting control. But often, it's just old wiring, a survival impulse from a different time. Your nervous system flares, the amygdala fires, and before your higher self can intervene, the moment is already gone. The Stoics warned us gently. We are not disturbed by things, but by the view we take of them. So what if, instead of letting that reflex lead, you gave yourself 3 quiet seconds? A breath, a pause, a chance to return to yourself before acting. Neuroscience confirms this works. That brief pause activates the prefrontal cortex, grounds your emotions, and gives space for perspective to emerge. Not suppression, sovereignty. Over time, something remarkable happens. You stop fearing your emotions. You begin to trust your ability to respond with clarity. Restraint becomes strength, not through repression but through presence. And others notice, you're no longer the blade that cuts at every provocation. You're the one who remains steady, who speaks only when the silence has been considered. The sharpest sword is often the one that stays in its sheath. Restraint is not weakness. It's the art of choosing your battles, your words, your energy, with care. It is emotional authority, hidden in silence. Some mornings, you wake up and feel ready, focused, clear, but many others, you don't. And on those days, the weight of fatigue, doubt, or emotional heaviness can feel stronger than any reason to act. You wait to feel inspired. You wait to feel like yourself again. But the truth is, moods are waves, and if your actions are tethered to them, your life will move in circles. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't rely on feelings to determine their direction. They placed duty above mood, not as a denial of emotion, but as an anchor in the midst of it. Virtue to them was action, quiet, consistent, unglamorous, not because it felt good, but because it was right. Modern behavioral science echoes this through identity-based habits. When your actions flow from who you've chosen to become, not from how you happen to feel, you build trust within yourself, and that trust becomes inner stability. So ask yourself each day gently, what is one thing I will do, regardless of how I feel? Not 10 things. 1. A small, non-negotiable act that honors your values. Maybe it's preparing a meal with presence. Maybe it's showing up on time. Maybe it's staying silent in a conversation where you'd usually defend yourself. Whatever it is, let it be deliberate. Let it be rooted, because the lighthouse doesn't flicker to match the storm. It holds, steady, constant, unmoved by the emotional weather around it. And perhaps that is your path too, to act from principle, not from mood. To build a life that isn't shaped by fleeting emotion, but by the quiet repetition of meaning. There's a kind of tension that forms when you believe life should behave the way you expect, when you carry silent assumptions that people should act a certain way, that timing should match your plans, that fairness should follow your sense of justice. But the world doesn't operate by personal preference. Nature has its own rhythm, unfolding, neutral, exact. The Stoics didn't fight this. They aligned with it. They saw that peace isn't found in making life obey your will, but in learning how to move with its current, without losing your depth. When you resist the natural flow, seasons, losses, endings, you create internal friction. But when you observe without clinging, something shifts. You begin to participate in life rather than argue with it. This is not giving up, it's waking up. Every element of nature holds a lesson. The silence of early morning, the decay of autumn leaves, the unpredictability of wind. They're not symbols, they're teachers, reflecting truths we often ignore, that change is constant, that decay is part of growth, that silence is not absence, it's presence of a different kind. What if each day, you asked quietly, what is nature trying to show me today? Not to find meaning where there is none, but to remind yourself that you are not separate, you are not above, you are part of this. The tree does not argue with the season. It doesn't resist winter or cling to spring. It adapts with dignity. It remains rooted even as everything around it transforms. So can you. When you stop expecting the world to meet your inner timeline, you find calm. When you walk in rhythm with what is, you feel less threatened by what might be. And slowly, life becomes less of a battle, more of a quiet belonging. Perhaps now you understand. Stoicism is not a toolkit to fix what is broken in you. It is not a ladder to climb above emotion, nor a set of cold rules to shield yourself from pain. It is a return to something more honest, more still, more enduring. You don't become stoic by learning how to dominate your feelings. You become stoic by learning how to sit with them, without being consumed. This isn't about emotional suppression, it's about emotional alignment, living in a way that your inner life and your outer actions begin to reflect the same quiet integrity. Because the cost of neglecting these principles isn't dramatic, it's subtle. It shows up in the erosion of self-trust, in the reactivity that becomes your default, in the small compromises that feel easier than silence, until one day you don't recognize the person you've become. And yet, you were never far. Stillness was always there, beneath the chaos, beneath the fear, beneath the constant doing, waiting to be remembered. The Stoics didn't offer armor. They offered a mirror, a chance to see yourself not as the world sees you, but as you truly are beneath the noise. Imagine this, a deep body of water, undisturbed. That's not the absence of motion, it's the presence of depth. Stoicism is that water, still, clear, quiet, not to escape life, but to stand in it, with eyes open, heart steady, and strength that does not need to be loud. And maybe that is the most radical thing you can do. To live not as someone trying to prove their worth, but as someone who remembers they never lost it.